Oh, thank you so much, Andrew, for this experiment to um, record a conversation, even though we only have probably met once before, really live in a global diet meditation realm.
Yes, and we've seen each other in the global dyad meditations many times. I've seen your face in the gallery many times, and I think we've done one one meditation ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So the experience really also on my side is that there is a familiarity and there's a slight memory of a dyad with you where I felt um, cozy or safe, secure. And I remember I became curious about you. And then the next step was that in another WhatsApp group, you sent me a message which made me feel seen and respected. And somehow my nervous system saved this and connected it with you. And ever since, my curiosity grew. And now finally I reached out for this experiment, knowing that you are also into experimenting with other um, approaches to create we spaces.
Yes, I am. And I think that stepping outside of the boxes and allowing ourselves to go our own way, finding our own direction is an important part of the whole spiritual exploration, I guess. It's there's this tension between I was brought up Catholic and brought with a very, very strict sense of what was the right way to do it. And I've struggled with that a lot. That and another part of my nature, which is feels good when I'm breaking out of the boxes, when I'm allowing myself to explore what's coming and what's new and what's fresh. That's both scary for me and also exciting to be out of the boxes. And if I stay in the boxes too long, I start to get a kind of stuckness that I that I don't like. So I've explored lots of spiritual traditions in my life and never really found a home in some important way. That's sort of a half truth because I do have homes, I guess, more than a single path that like I'm not a Buddhist and I'm not a Hindu and and struggling with I love the Christian tradition. I was brought up in it and I feel very close. I love it. And yet I think of that as being part of a universal spirituality, I guess. That it is a part of that, but it's not the only part of it. There's the universal tradition is bigger than any one of the ways that we of the cultures and traditions that we have for it. So, yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But you go, you go.
when you say expand, and I'm thinking of dyads, I noticed that dyads gave me or give me um, like a some kind of a safety box in which I can experiment leaving the box. But it's like a frame that carries me as it's a structure in time and in how to relate. And then I can take that secure and structured space to experiment myself in it and look for niches of expanding the box or leaving the box. Does that
Yeah,
resonate?
it does. It does. And the dyad structure itself allows for many different things to happen inside it. So just I don't know if your viewers are familiar with the dyad structure, but there is that very, very tight really a kind of ritual clarity around listener and speaker. And within that, though, there's a great deal of freedom that can happen, and many different things come up for us, and we explore different areas, and things we'd never thought of appear, and we can explore those even within that structure. And yeah, and for me, the differences of where that can go is to use it for not only for enlightenment, which is the original home and source, is the enlightenment search, but for other communities, like as the safety between women and men, for example, which is an area that I've long been interested in, and and how this structure and this safety or this clarity of not being what I love about dyads, here it is that there's a great deal of um, respect for the individual, so that as an individual, I'm not interfered with, I'm not instructed by the other, I'm not helped, I'm not fixed. I have my own experience, I have my own life just as I am. And the other has, and I'm aware that the other has that too. And that in a sense, having my own, I allow the other to have it, or the other allows me to have mine. So I feel, thank you. Thank you for letting me be myself with all of my wonderfulnesses and my struggles. You give it all to me. And I really, I love that. And so that kind of freedom to be the human that we are is is written right into it, right into that. And and I found it a place where I can learn that um, and deepen in that often. Having been a long-term meditator on my own, the dyad space has provided a great deal of safety, I guess, and connection. Connection is the word that I want. So there's a connection in it. And I've often felt isolated and struggled growing up I grew up with a lot of sense of dislocation, and I didn't feel at home. So dyads have really helped me to feel um, a sense of belonging to myself and connection. So, and when it's repeated time and time again, just a little bit of you're connected, you're part of a whole, you can relax and allow yourself to explore where you have to go. Repeating that daily, 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 as meditation does. It's that daily repetition, but it increases. It's like a catalyst for me for the meditation, the private meditation, which I still do. I'm still interested. I will always do that for sure. Yeah. And in a sense, the private one is maybe my home, but um, the dyads or the other meditation partners are like my family in a sense, or they're a kind of family. I mean, I have my local people as well, but yeah.
Yeah. And you were at one point you were mentioning also as a helpful tool for connecting between men and women. And
Yeah.
as I checked the details like that I could find on the internet, that seems to be an experimental field that you are in pretty intensively.
It
And
I
I'm wondering from what background do you come to do that? Also, like have you studied anything like social work or psychology or something?
well, it's more a question of personal need than a professional profession. It came from the inside rather than the outside. But I would say I was a child of the 60s. I'm an old hippie. So I was very dislocated as that. It was, I didn't want to be a part of the regular world. I was, I lived on the fringes. And when I was about 42, something like that, I got into a men's group. And it was the first time in my life, in 42 years, that I'd ever told the truth about my life. I'd ever felt really heard and seen as the person that I was. Um, and it was incredibly important to have that, I'd been missing it my whole life and not knowing that I was missing it. So that was an initiation in a sense into, oh, this person I can tell my truth. It's got a place where it's welcome. And that then I started co-started, but I was the first editor of a men's journal for 10 years. We wrote articles and we had national conferences in Canada for men and women to talk about men and men's experience. So all of that, I got to know the people who were in that area. Most of them, like myself, had had a family background that was it involves struggles with men and women, and maybe people who are really drawn to that area deeply usually have something deep happening in there, and that was true for me as well.
Yeah.
And I continued to be interested in that conversation for many years, but what I notice about it is that it's very focused, the public conversation, if you look on Twitter or anything, on the two sexes being angry at the other sex for not doing it, for not for not doing it right.
Mm.
A lot of bitterness and hurt feelings in there, and it's not productive, and it hasn't changed, even though some wonderfully clear writers have shown that our two sexes are complementary all the way down. We are deeply, deeply loving each other and connected to each other. So much so, but it doesn't feel, but people are not in the conversation finding that and seeing it in the other. So it's an angry space. And even with allies and support, it continues to be not a loving place to discover what I think is our our sameness beneath our great sameness beneath our great difference. I can say it that way. So I see that the respect, the clarity about my stuff and the other stuff in the dyad space is a beautiful place for men and women to hear each other and to see each other and to take responsibility for their part and allow the others to have their part, not trying to control the other, like you have to do it this way, or this is what you must do, or this is what's wrong with you. None of that. Like, but to allow each have enough safety for us to show our natural love for each other to come out. So in a ritual way. So trying to clarify too between the difference between it's not a dating scene at all. But this is a work in progress, by the way, and I'm really looking for women or a woman or women who want to meet the men as we come to our clarity. The women can do some work on their work on their own, and then we can meet together. And what we've been experimenting with the men is questions like, tell me how you hide in relationship. It's a powerful question, and it gets at it too at an emotional level that the Enlightenment search questions don't bring up so easily. So having done hundreds of dyads with women, we've never gone to that more personal level. So if we can do it in the ritual space of the dyad and meet there, and work with a question such as that, so we each see this is how I hide in relationship, and as an example of a man, and the partner, the dyad partner, can share her experience. So I'm looking forward to that day. And there's a few plans at local festivals to be bringing that in. It's sort of coming up this summer, but maybe in the Zoom space as well. So that would be, I'm excited by that possibility. And I guess partly for my own healing too. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I notice in the dyads, for me, it's like a disappearing of that difference. It's like coming down to humanness and experimenting or experiencing that, what you said before, we are complementary, but at the base, we are just the same. We're just
Yeah.
humans. And to there are times when I do a dyad and there is a male in front and I'm in this dyad, it's like the face neutralizes and I don't see a man anymore. I see a human being and I don't feel as a woman anymore. I feel like a human being. And then so many ideas or concepts seem to just drop off. And there is a connection, yeah, not at all concerning man woman but humanness.
That's true. And but and I'm curious about how I noticed that as well. I mean, that's true that the commonness is what reveals, and not, and we don't, and we certainly don't talk about being the sex that we are. But because of the social world that we live in, with the animosity between women and men that's out there, how do we bridge? So if I have an experience of oneness with a woman in a meditative spiritual sense, maybe that's part of why I want to bring some of that into the world of conflict. But I've often noticed that people in groups can feel something very deeply in the group that disappears when they go out into the world, because there's not a we can use the safety or the bubble of a ritual space or of a group space to feel something that we don't allow ourselves to feel. We don't consciously notice that we're dropping that when we go into the world.
Yeah.
We don't carry that with us unless we somehow bring the conflict in us into the space or name it somehow. And we can sort of do the integration, some of that integration here. But I've often noticed that people want to belong. So if we go into the world where there's a certain way of being, we we become that, and we don't see ourselves doing it, but we want to belong. And so that work has to be, I think, brought to consciousness in some way, or we have to see, I do that. So how can I integrate that within myself?
Yeah.
And it's not just women and men. I mean, there's all kinds of things happening in the world. I know in Canada and in Germany right now, there's this huge concerns on the part of the people around what's going on with farmer protests and trucker convoys, and The sense of social control is out there. How do we, but none of that is mentioned, and it's rightfully so, in the dyad enlightenment space, right? And yet, those are the problems that we step outside the door and we walk into. That's our world, right? And that's the world of the people that we love and our families. They also are going to that. So how can we bridge those separate worlds? A world of conflict in the social sphere and a world of integration that we're doing personally. How can we together?
And I'm curious, do you have experience with other we space practices, with other communicative styles that are maybe have a different kind of frame, but they do have a structure that you find more helpful or less helpful than Dyads?
I don't find anything as helpful as Dyads, to be honest. I have done a lot of work with we spaces, and I have a book actually that really is about we spaces. It's called Evolutionary You, and it's about collective intelligence in we spaces. And I wrote it after doing dyad-like things with people, and then when ideas came, just wrote about those ideas right after, and then I collected all of those, and that's the basis of the book. But dyads offer some special gifts. They give us the real clarity around speaking my truth or speaking one's truth, and the listener, and the clarity of the listener who in the dyad space doesn't nod or agree. It's not a social space, it's a ritual space, it's a meditative space. So that clarity is just enormously opening of the space to tell more truth and to receive more of the other. So nothing has matched that. A lot of spaces use triads and powerful questions as well, but then they become more social within that three-way. Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in, because I grew up with a huge amount of sense of not belonging. I've been looking for belonging spaces a lot, but I find dyads to be the most helpful. But then again, this is a desire to move out and to belong to well, of course, every meditator, I guess, is wanting to belong to themselves in a way that they're connected to God as we understand him, or vertically connected to God, and that's the real belonging that we're going for. It's not that the other things like man, woman are first, God is first, or that is first, but it's the bridges to those other worlds that we live in horizontally here in our cultures.
Yeah. So listening to you, I do remember strongly one experience I had in a dyad where it became so clear that my yearning for feeling connected was met in a space where I didn't do what I usually do to connect. I didn't go in a chit chat with the other. I did a dyad. I listened and I didn't react. And I shared and I didn't get any reaction. And through not getting a reaction, it was like being gently pushed into myself and more listening to myself than wanting to be listened to by the other. Usually I experience this. I'm talking. I want you to listen. So I'm really trying to make you listen to me and to be interesting for you. And there it's like, okay, that's not what it's here for. And I start to actually listen to myself. And then there was some happening taking place. I'm feeling connected with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I feel connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And anybody could have been there in this space, and I would have felt connection because I feel connected to myself. And that was a big aha for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. I I recognize that experience, and I think every dyad practitioner, sooner or later, and more or less always, more or less often, feels it as well. I recognize it on you. When I hear you say it, I recognize it very well. Yeah. And that's why that's the incredible gift to be able to go back there on a daily basis and to reconnect with that and to reconnect with what's necessary for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does seem to me that really taking this regular basis does change something in my nervous system so that it at a time it becomes somehow like an inborn ability. And so I did experience and witness myself over the time of the last year. I've done diets now for about a year, going out into the real world and finding myself in different ways in a changed way, connecting with the people out there who have no idea of dyads. And I was fascinated. So what's happening with myself? And who is this? I wasn't that 2 days
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And that was a very fascinating experience that made me stay with the dyads. And so now I am personally at a point now where I'm mm, curious about taking it into a relating space. So, as in dyads, we don't say you, we don't relate to the other. There is a little thirst um, to try that out. How could that be taking this addition into an experimental dyad space? So, that just to reveal where I'm standing now.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 So I like that by talking about it, in a way, we're opening the door to what, and maybe everybody sooner or later experiences that want, opening the door. What does it mean to bring, to, how am I to be in the world? How am I to be me in the world? It starts to make curiosity about that, and imagination goes. And according to our natures, I guess. I mean, some people may be very focused so that they just want to stay with the dyad and with the meditation and the spiritual vertical, I guess. But others of us, according to our natures, we may want to experiment in different ways. Here you are doing videos, and I do some videos as well. As well. Yeah, and seeing what comes. Of course, when we're talking to other people, we're out of our silos. I don't know if you know that word, but we're out of we're out of our own little rooms, our inner rooms, and we've come out into a larger room where we're together. You know, you out of your room, me out of my room. There's this larger room that we inhabit together, and that everybody inhabits together. But we're usually caught within our own story and our own problem world and our difficulties, and then we escape out of that into this, out of our ego world into the collective intelligence. We go out into that larger one, and that's where the world, I think, starts to wake up. We see ourselves. Oh, we're out of our ego, outside of our ego selves. There's a world where we're together, and it's possible. We go into that. So I think that's the awakening that we're wanting to happen. That we dream of, that the one world consciousness, or the one world waking up. We want that.
So for the listeners, is there do you have a space that you offer regularly, or how are you to contact to work with you?
Yeah, my my Substack, it uses my full name. You can put it in the low bar if you like. People can click on it and subscribe there. So right now, I'm only doing a regular space for men as we're working on finding ourselves to meet with the women. I have done a lot of other groups for sort of drop-in groups, but I'm not doing one right now. Um, not quite sure, not quite sure what that's going to look like, but I'm a group nut. I will always be doing groups, right? So I'm sure that there will be lots more groups happening. So yeah, but in the, yeah, yeah.
Thank
And for
you. Yeah.
sure, I'm available to, I love to um, do dyads and meet new people and find out. Well, I was going to say that earlier, that when we do dyads with people, a whole other world opens up for us with their interests and their wants. Oh, how can we collaborate? How can we do something together? That becomes part of it as well. There's a natural collaboration that starts to happen just because you see me and I see you. Oh, then we start to see, in a way, we're seeing something together, that we hadn't seen before that's possible for us. Yeah.
When I listen to you, I just get a picture like two glasses of water. You are one glass of water, I'm another glass of water. And so what I remember from some dyads is if I got a glimpse of this other glass of water, and there was something that resonated with my water, it was like I got a drop from the other glass into my glass, and I could experiment or experience myself. Who am I with this drop of the other's water?
Mm-hmm.
And then I also, even though we don't verbally relate to each other, it gets clear that the other also has gotten a drop of my water and experiments with that. And that's the beauty of this um, subtle and slow space that's happening.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that like with your metaphor of the water glasses, but that's right. That's right. I think of it as also as stories. So when we hear each other's stories, then the stories, without us trying, the stories talk to each other. Your story and my story talks to each other inside somewhere. And a new story, and they make a new story. How is my story with your story in it? Right? It's the same thing. How is my water with your drop in it?
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, and then the stories talk to each other, and then so there's more and more stories that are talking to each other inside us, right? Or inside what is us? Inside us, this larger us that we're part of. The stories are talking to each other, and and um, and then the stories that we're part of, they intermingle with the other stories from the other places. I mean, this is the slow and fast process of waking, because who knows what the stories are talking about and what they're what they're seeing, right? There's a much more is going on than we are consciously aware of, because we're so tied to our own body experience and our own body
Yeah.
work. You know?
Wow. So
Yeah.
even this exchange that we now are having or will be having had is like
Yes. Yeah.
already um, a co-creation
Yes.
and has already developed a new story.
It's a yes. Yeah. It's a kind of fertilization, I guess, of our stories, and then some other people hearing may have be a small part or a part of their story, and yeah, and they may contact somebody else, or they may contact you and me in another way, and it goes on, and it's springtime. Things are growing. Things are growing around. Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Sonia. It's great. Yeah, I was had a busy morning, and I was feeling you know, not really all here when we started, but you know, just we're talking about something that's true and that we love, and it comes to life. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking.